Chapter 329, Deals 2. Look for more opportunities to make more money, Huzi said without looking back. Before Beiji could react, Huzi had already gone out. He rode his bicycle to Zai village while thinking about how to persuade Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu to sell more of their tonic wine. After he tasted the sweetness of making a lot of money, it is now difficult for him to be satisfied with a small amount of money. Now, most of his customers ask about the tonic wine every few days, because when he sold Lu Jiu's tonic wine before, he didn't sell the entire jar to one person, but divided it into several small bamboo tubes. He believes that since the price is very expensive, it will be hard to sell, so it is better to sell small quantities at a cheaper price. In this way, not only will the price not be too expensive, but he can also make more money. Unexpectedly, the tonic wine sold out faster than he imagined. He forgot that most of his customers were wealthy families and powerful government officials. Most of them are willing to spend more money to buy good things. So when they discovered that tonic wine was good for the body, they came to his door one after another and persuaded him to sell more tonic wine. When he arrived at Zai village, the sun had just risen and the villagers were waking up one after another. He rode to Lu's house and saw Pan Magia sweeping the front yard. He smiled and called her Magia. Pan Magia raised her head in surprise when she heard her cousin's voice. Seeing her cousin waving to her, she was stunned for a moment and walked quickly to her cousin. She looked at her cousin and asked, "Cousin, what are you doing here so early?" Huzi looked at her from head to toe, shook his head, clicked his tongue and said teasingly, "Tusk, tusk, tusk, look at your cheeks. If people didn't know, they would think you had 2 apples stuck on your face." Pan Magia was irritated by his words, hit him on the arm and asked, "Are you calling me fat?" Huzi looked at her bulging cheeks and burst out laughing. He reached out and pinched her cheeks and said, "No, you are not fat at all. Brother is just joking with you." Pan Magia slapped his hand away, rolled her eyes at him and said, "Cousin, you haven't answered my question yet. What are you doing here so early?" After teasing his silly cousin, Huzi was in a good mood and said, "I came to see Brother Lei, but I don't know where his home is. Can you take me there?" Hearing his words, Pan Magia's eyes lit up and she whispered, "Cousin, are you here to give money to Jiu?" Huzi smiled and said nothing. Looking at his smile, Pan Magia knew that she had guessed correctly. She hurriedly went home to notify Mother Lu, put away the broom, and sat on the back seat of the bicycle. She hugged his waist, pointed in one direction and said, "Cousin, Jiu's house is on that hillside." After listening to her words, Huzi looked at the hill outside the village and said, "Hold on." Along the way, many villagers saw her hugging Huzi's waist. Most of the villagers already knew about her relationship with Li Lingyun, and they were shocked when they saw her with another man. Although neither Pan Magia nor Huzi felt there was anything wrong with their interactions, the villagers, especially the unmarried women, began to discuss them. "I don't know what's good about her that made Aunt Wang praise her so much. Looking at her like this, she is definitely not a good woman," a villager sneered. A young woman looked at Pan Magia's back with jealousy and said, "Sister-in-law, you may not know that Aunt Wang wants to pair her son with Comrade Pan, but because of Uncle Li's second son, Aunt Wang's son can only take a back seat. Now it seems that this Comrade Pan is not simple. On the one hand, she has a relationship with Brother Lingyun, but on the other hand, she's entangled with several men." After hearing what they said, another villager added, "I have to say that educated youths are not simple. Each of them is better at seducing men than others." After hearing what she said, the young woman's ears perked up and she asked, "Sister-in-law, why did you say that?" The villager came closer and looked around, as if she was afraid of being heard. She lowered her voice and said, "Do you know the educated youth from old Ma's house?" Hearing her question, both of them nodded and asked, "What's wrong with her?" She was caught lying naked on the bed with old Ma's son. "What? Isn't old Ma's son engaged to Aunt Lin's niece?" "That's why I say the educated youth is not simple," the villager said, slapping her thighs and widening her eyes. While the villagers were discussing heatedly, Huzi and Pan Magia came to the hill. Before the bicycle passed by Li Lingyun's house, Pan Magia quickly grabbed Huzi's waist and said, "Cousin, stop." Being pinched at his waist so suddenly, Huzi screamed in pain and stopped abruptly. He turned back to glare at her and asked, "Magia, are you asking for a beating?" Seeing her cousin rubbing his waist and making a hissing sound, Pan Magia smiled sheepishly and said, "Cousin, I didn't mean to pinch you so hard. It's unintentional." Huzi rolled his eyes at her and asked, "Why are you shouting suddenly? Do you know that we will fall down if I don't manage to stabilize the bicycle just now?" As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Li Lingyun's cold voice, "What are you two doing?" While Huzi was surprised by his sudden appearance, Pan Magia was overjoyed. She jumped off the bike and walked quickly towards him. She hugged his arm and said, "Brother Yun, my cousin is here to see Juyu. We are now going to her house." Listening to Pan Magia's words, Li Lingyun knew that his girlfriend was very happy because Huzi's visit was to deliver the money from selling snacks. He touched her head and said, I'll go with you." Huzi squinted at their linked arms and asked with raised eyebrows, "Magia, what's going on?" Remembering that she hadn't told her cousin about her and Li Lingyun yet, she smiled and said, "Cousin, let me introduce him to you. This is my boyfriend, Li Lingyun." Hearing her introduction, Li Lingyun smiled and called shamelessly, "Cousin." Huzi was speechless by his words. He is clearly older than him, but he could call him so smoothly. This old man is so shameless. Huzi decided to ignore him, turned to look at Pan Magia and asked, "Magia, have you told your parents about this?" Pan Magia nodded and said, "I have already told them. Brother Yun and I will visit them after the summer harvest." Huzi nodded, looked at Li Lingyun and said, "My aunt likes to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, while her husband likes to drink. If you want to win over them, you must pay attention to these things." Hearing this, Li Lingyun smiled and said, "Thank you for your reminder, cousin." Huzi waved his hand and said, "I'll park the bike at your place." Li Lingyun was not angry because of his casual behavior, but felt delighted instead. Since Huzi behaved casually towards him, it meant that he supported him and Pan Magia. Before leaving home, Li Lingyun went to the kitchen to get a bamboo basket and walked to his girlfriend. Pan Magia saw the bamboo basket and asked, "Brother Yun, what is this?" "I picked some wild fruits for you. Didn't you say you wanted to eat wild berries?" "Thank you, Brother Yun, you are the best," she said with a bright smile. Huzi walked behind them and almost vomited yesterday's dinner. He didn't expect that one day he would see with his own eyes how disgusting his cousin was. Growing up with her, he knew that she was a tomboy who rarely acted like a spoiled child, even in front of her parents. Now, seeing her act like a baby toward Li Lingyun was too much for him to handle. Fortunately, it didn't take long for them to arrive at Li Chenmo's home. Otherwise, his teeth may fall out because of the couple's sweet talk. Li Lingyun knocked on the door and said, "Third brother, are you at home?" Hearing his voice, Lu Ju looked at her husband and asked, "Husband, do you have any plans with your second brother?" Li Chenmo wiped the sweat from his forehead and shook his head. He went to open the door and was surprised to see Huzi and Pan Magia also there. He probably guessed Huzi's purpose, so he stepped aside to let them in and said, "Please come in." This is not the first time for Pan Magia and Li Lingyun to go to Li Chenmo's house, so when they see the thriving vegetable garden, they are very calm. Unlike them, Huzi's eyes widened when he saw the green scenery in front of him. He had heard from Beiji that Lu Juyu's vegetable garden was so good, but he never expected it to be this good. Li Chenmo led them to the living room, while Lu Juyu went to the kitchen and took out a pot of hot soy milk and a basket of steamed buns from her own space. She put the breakfast on a tray with a few bamboo cups and went to the living room. Entering the living room, she put breakfast on the table and said, "Second brother, Brother Huzi Magia, have some breakfast first." Pan Magia already regarded this place as her home, so she didn't refuse, and said, "Thank you, Juyu, I'm starving to death." As she finished her words, she poured the soy milk into a cup and handed it to her boyfriend and cousin. After that, she took the steamed buns, handed them to them, and started to eat. Lu Ju sat next to Li Chenmo and smiled. "If you want to eat, just come over to my place for a meal." Pan Magia nodded like a chicken pecking at rice and said, "Okay." Li Chenmo was already used to the foodie nature of his future second sister-in-law, so when he saw his second brother kept passing steamed buns to her, he just shook his head. He looked at Huzi and asked, "Brother Huzi, why are you here today?" Huzi swallowed the steamed bun, drank some soy milk, and then took out the bag from his clothes. He put it on the table and said, "I'm here to send money and make a pre-order. In addition, I want to talk to you about cooperation." Hearing his words, Li Chenmo nodded and said, "Beiji has already asked me about the vegetables. My wife and I have agreed that if the price is good, I will sell them to you." Huzi thought for a while and said, "Brother Lei, instead of one-time transaction, I want to make a long-term deal with you." Li Chenmo raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh, I don't know what kind of deal it is. Please tell me in detail, Brother Huzi." When Huzi listened to his words, hope surged in his heart and said, "I want to be the only buyer of your stuff. whether it is snacks, grains, meats, vegetables, or anything else. This way you don't have to worry about finding someone who sells your products. In return, I want 5% as a fee. When Li Chenmo, Li Lingyun, and Lu Jiu heard this, a gleam flashed in their eyes. They know that although Huzi's income will be less under such conditions, in the beginning, he will not actually suffer. With their products being so popular, it's only a matter of time before prices keep rising, and by then, not to mention gaining a reputation, Huzi will be able to make back its previous investment, including profits. As for Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu, although they can indeed make more money from this transaction and don't have to worry about no one buying their products in the short term, they will also suffer some losses in the long run. After all, with this deal, they cannot sell their products to others even if others offer a higher price than Huzi. As a businessman, Li Chenmo admitted that Huzi is indeed good at doing business. After considering the pros and cons, he looked at his wife and asked in a low voice, "Wife, do you want to sign this agreement?" Lu Jiu thought for a while and whispered, "Husband, we now have many products and it is indeed easier to cooperate with Huzi, but the risk is too great. If something happens, we may be dragged into dirty water. So we'd better sell it like before. Besides, isn't your friend a grain seller? We can sell the grain to your friend and the rest to Huzi. What's more, 5% is too much. In the long run, this 5% may cost more than tens of thousands of yuan." Li Chenmo nodded, looked at Huzi and said, "Brother Huzi, unfortunately, my wife and I decided to reject this proposal. We will sell it as before. As long as you give us a reasonable price, we will sell our products to you." Huzi was disappointed that they rejected his offer, but he did not insist. He nodded and said, "In that case, you can tell me the price of your vegetables. I will take as much as you can provide." Lu Jiu nodded and said, "Okay." After saying that, she picked up the bag and left the living room. She walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and entered her own space. She appeared in her space and took out the cans of money and coupons from the cabinet. Sitting on the bed, she took out the money from the bag and counted it. Yesterday she made 7,338 yuan selling snacks and other items. She counted snacks, meat sauce, fruit slices, and roasted chicken, deducted the cost of ingredients, and took out 2,995 yuan from this pile of money. The money will be shared equally with Pan Mejia and Zhang Dongmei. As for the rest of the money, it was earned from selling dumplings, wild honey, and her own products. With this money, she and her husband have accumulated more than 50,000 yuan. She was happy but not satisfied. To buy a courtyard house in the city, she needs to prepare hundreds of thousands of yuan. More importantly, she wanted to open a restaurant and needed money to buy a storefront in a good location. Therefore, she needs at least 700,000 yuan in total. Now, besides wild honey, oyster sauce, and vegetables, the most expensive thing she has in her space is tonic wine. She took out the pre-order list and raised her lips. The small jar of tonic wine she brought last time could be sold for 1,350 yuan after deducting Huzi's share. Since her tonic wine contains spiritual grass powder, the health benefits have been improved several times and can be sold at a higher price. Judging from the condition of the elders of the Li family, a glass of her tonic wine can make their health several times better. After thinking for a long time, she finally decided to sell 100 ml of tonic wine for 500 yuan. After writing the price, she put the money back into the can and put it in the cabinet. Before leaving her space, she took some vegetables harvested from her garden previously and 100 ml of her new tonic wine. She put them in a bamboo basket and gave them to Huzi. Rather than offering empty words of assurance, let him try it for himself. When she came back with the bamboo basket, Li Lingyun, Pan Mejia, and Huzi had just finished drinking soy milk. After she put the bamboo basket on the table, she sat next to her husband and said, "Brother Huzi, these are the vegetables grown in my garden and my newly brewed tonic wine. This is the new price list. You can try the vegetables and the tonic wine first before you decide whether to buy my vegetables and tonic wine." Huzi opened the bamboo basket curiously and saw a small amount of fresh vegetables inside. Just looking at the vegetables, he could imagine how delicious they were. When her eyes fell on the small bamboo tube, he took it out and asked, "Sister-in-law, is this the new tonic wine you brew?" Lu Jiu nodded but didn't say much. Huzi looked at the quantity of wine and looked at the price in disbelief. He didn't expect Lu Jiu's appetite to be so big. It's outrageous that this small amount can be sold for 500 yuan. He wanted to say that it was impossible to sell this small amount for 500 yuan, but seeing how calm they were, he hesitated. After a while, he opened the bamboo tube cover, and a fresh mint scent with a hint of sweetness filled the room. Just smelling the fragrance made him feel refreshed and his mind became clearer. His eyes lit up, he took a sip and tasted it carefully. Unlike the previous tonic wine, where he could still taste the earthy flavor of herbs, This new tonic wine was as clear as spring dew, very refreshing and sweet. After just a small sip, his nerves, which had been tense for weeks, relaxed, and he breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the clear wine in the tube and said, "Sister-in-law, if you didn't say it was tonic wine, I would have thought what you gave me was spring dew." Before Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu could speak, Pan Meigia said, "Cousin, your taste buds are indeed good. In order to brew this tonic wine, Jiu needs to collect dew every day and look for wild ginseng. Brewing this wine is not easy, it depends on luck. Even if you have money, you may not be able to buy this wine." After listening to Pan Meigia's words, Huzi finally understood why Lu Jiu dared to charge such a high price. Not to mention looking for wild ginseng, just collecting dew requires a lot of work. While the quality is very good, the problem is quantity. He looked at Lu Jiu and asked, "Sister-in-law, how much tonic wine do you have now?" Lu Jiu thought of the tonic wine in her space warehouse and smiled. "It should be able to meet the needs of your customers for the time being." Hearing her words, Huzi breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Then I'll let Beiji come to pick up the goods tonight. It's getting late and I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now." After sending Huzi away, Lu Jiu took Pan Meigia to the bedroom, while Li Chenmo and Li Lingyun went to harvest the vegetables. Sitting on the kang bed, Lu Jiu took out a pouch from her clothes and said, "Meigia, after deducting the cost of ingredients, we made 2,995 yuan for yesterday's snacks and food. Each of us will receive 998 yuan. As soon as Pan Meigia heard what she said, her eyes widened in shock and she said quickly, "That's too much. Jiu, I didn't help much yesterday. All these snacks and food were made according to your recipes and used your ingredients. You even taught me the recipes. It's unfair if you divide it evenly. I'm just your food tester, so just give me 5%. Lu Jiu was amused by her words and said, "Meigia, we agree to divide it equally." Pan Meigia shook her head and insisted, "Jiu, I'm serious. If you give me so much, I won't dare to do this with you anymore. I can't take advantage of you." Seeing her solemn expression, Lu Jiu sighed and said, "If it had been anyone else, they might have rushed over as quickly as possible. You are the only one who would refuse money." "We are friends. Friends do not take advantage of each other," Pan Meigia said with a grin. After thinking about it, Lu Jiu finally said, "Then I will give you 15%. You can't refuse, otherwise I will be angry." "All right." After calculation, Lu Jiu handed 450 yuan to Pan Meigia. After dividing the money, Pan Meigia took Li Lingyun and left, while Lu Jiu continued to collect the vegetables with Li Chenmo. A few hours later, they finally finished harvesting the vegetables, had lunch, and went to Father Li's house. She brought Father Li and Li Chen's family a jar of tonic wine and a basket of fresh vegetables. When they arrived at Father Li's house, they saw that the front yard had been plowed and vegetables had been planted. After parking their bike, they entered the house. When Father Li saw them coming, he felt happy and said, "Both of you are here." Li Chenmo smiled and asked, "Father, how are you doing lately?" Father Li put down his teacup and said, "I'm much better now. Third son, what brings you and your wife here today?" "Father, our vegetables are ready to be harvested, so we brought some over for you to try," Lu Jiu said with a smile. Seeing the big basket, Father Li said happily, "The vegetables look good, thank you." Thinking of the purpose of coming today, Lu Jiu stood up and said, "Father, husband, I'm going to find my sister-in-law." "All right." Lu Jiu carried the bamboo basket to the backyard and saw Zhang Dongmei washing dishes near the kitchen. Seeing her coming, Zhang Dongmei was happy and said, "Third sister-in-law, you are here." "Eldest sister-in-law, I brought some tonic wine and vegetables for you and father," Lu Jiu said, showing her the bamboo basket. "Thank you, sister-in-law. Can you help me put it in the kitchen? I'm almost done." Hearing this, she went to the kitchen and placed the bamboo basket next to the cabinet. She took out the tonic wine and put it in the cabinet, then went to find Zhang Dongmei. Knowing that she was here to talk about money today, Zhang Dongmei quickly finished washing the dishes and said, "Third sister-in-law, let's go to my bedroom to talk." When they both went to the bedroom, Father Li had already gone back to his room to rest, while Li Chenmo went to the backyard to find his brother. After closing the door, Zhang Dongmei asked in a low voice, "Third sister-in-law, are you here to talk about that matter?" Lu Jiu nodded and took out a pouch from his clothes. She opened it and said, "Sister-in-law, after deducting the cost of ingredients, we made a total of 2,995 yuan. Meigia only took 15%, and I plan to split the rest equally between us." Hearing her words, Zhang Dongmei was surprised and asked in disbelief, can we make so much selling these foods? Lu Jiu nodded and began to count the money. Seeing this, Zhang Dongmei said, "Sister-in-law, just give me as much as Major. I didn't help too much, we used your raw materials and recipes, so you just give me 15% and the rest is yours." "But we have agreed to split it equally," Lu Jiu said. Zhang Dongmei held her hand and said with a smile, "At that time I wanted to use my own ingredients and recipes. Since all I contributed was manpower, it is natural that I would get less. I am very grateful to you and my third brother for giving me this opportunity. Without you, don't talk about earning so much, I might not even be able to earn 5 yuan. Since she was so insistent, Lu Jiu could only agree. She handed her 450 yuan and asked, "Sister-in-law, we have a lot of orders tonight. Can you come over after dinner?" Zhang Dongmei took the money and said with a smile, "Of course, I'll be there after sunset." After reaching an agreement, Lu Jiu and Li Chenmo returned home. Not long after, Li Chen's came back from the foothills with several bundles of firewood. After washing briefly, he walked into the bedroom and found his wife counting money happily. Seeing a pile of money on the Kang bed, he asked in surprise, "Wife, where did you get all this money?" Zhang Dongmei saw her husband and said, "Husband, you are back, close the door first." Li Chen's was a little curious, so he quickly closed the door, sat next to his wife and asked, "Wife, did you borrow money from someone?" Hearing her husband's words, she glanced at him and said proudly, "I didn't borrow money. The third sister-in-law gave me the money for selling snacks. We made a total of 2,995 yuan. Because I only contributed manpower, I asked the third sister-in-law to give me as much as what she gave to Major." Li Chen's was startled by his wife's words and asked, "Can you make so much just by selling snacks?" Zhang Dongmei nodded and said, "Pan Major and I each get 15%, and the rest goes to my third sister-in-law. In just one day I earned 450 yuan. Husband, now I understand why the third brother's family can eat meat and white rice every day. Although there are risks, it is really easy to make money." Li Chen still couldn't calm down from the shock and said, "Wife, we must always remember the help from the third brother's family this time. With this money, our son can go to school and we can buy medicine for father. You also can send some money back for your parents." Zhang Dongmei took out 150 yuan and handed it to her husband. "Husband, use this money to buy some books and stationery for your sons. The remaining money was used to buy cigarettes." After hearing what his wife said, Li Chen's felt happy and said, "Thank you, wife." Although he doesn't smoke, it would be much more convenient if he has a cigarette to share with others when he goes out to socialize. Due to the indifferent nature of his father, second brother and third brother, the matter of interacting with the villagers fell on his shoulders. No matter what, they will occasionally need help from others, so they still need to have a good relationship with the villagers. After dividing the money, Zhang Dongmei wrapped the remaining money in oil paper, put it in a jar, and hid it on the loose bricks under the Kang bed. This way, no one can discover their hidden stash. For daily use, she put some coupons and 10 yuan in a jar and placed it in the cabinet. When she was done, she turned to look at her husband and said, "Husband, I will go to the third brother's house after dark. Jiu said there are a lot of orders tonight." Hearing her words, Li Chen's nodded, "I'll go with you. It's not safe for you to go out alone at night." "Okay," Zhang Dongmei nodded. At the same time, Li Lingyan was sending Pan Major back to the Lu family's house. Along the way, he noticed the gazes of the villagers. They would whisper to each other while pointing at him and his girlfriend. He was displeased to see them gossiping about his girlfriend, and his frown deepened. Seeing that her boyfriend was unhappy, Pan Major pulled his little finger and asked, "Brother Yun, what's wrong?" Li Lingyan hooked her little finger, shook his head and said with a smile, "It's nothing." Although she knew there must be something that made her boyfriend unhappy, but because he didn't want to talk about it, she didn't ask any further. When she was approaching Lu's house, she said, "Brother Yun, I'm going to Jiu's house tonight." Hearing her words, Li Lingyan looked at her and said, "I'll pick you up." After thinking about it, Pan Major asked, "Brother Yun, can you pick me up before dinner? I want to have dinner with you." Li Lingyan was very pleased with her initiative and readily agreed. Is there anything you want to eat? I'll buy it for you." "No, I've learned a new recipe. I'll cook for you tonight," Pan Major said. "Okay." As they chatted, they arrived at Lu's house. When they entered the yard, they saw Wang Muxiao arguing with a woman. Although she was only more than 3 months pregnant, her belly was already showing and was even bigger than usual. She held out her belly, put one hand on her waist, pointed at the woman's nose and said, "Shameless woman, do you think I didn't dare to hit you? Who do you think you are, asking my husband to take care of you and your child?" The woman held 3 children, looked at her with red eyes and said, "Younger sister, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's nothing I can do about it." Before she finished speaking, Wang Muxiao interrupted her. "Who is your younger sister? You'd better watch your words, or I won't mind tearing your mouth apart." Li Lingyun was startled by her fierce temper. Every time he comes over, Wang Muxiao always speaks softly and smiles at him, especially when he brings the meat. So when he saw her being so fierce, he suddenly felt a little pity for Lu Cheng. "Sister, I can only ask Ah Cheng to adopt my child and take us in. I really have no other choice," the woman sobbed. After hearing her words, Wang Muxiao was so angry that her chest was clogged. This woman is so shameless. She was the one who didn't want to marry Lu Cheng in the first place and chose to marry a man in the town. Now her husband has abandoned her and her daughter and married another woman. She came here to ask Lu Cheng to take them in. Does she think Lu Cheng still had feelings for her, so she dared to come so blatantly? Lu Cheng is her man now, and whoever dares to covet him will face her wrath. Wang Muxiao looked around and found that the neighbors were peeking through the fence. Her mind was spinning rapidly. In a few seconds, she had already figured out how to defeat this vixen. Since this vixen likes to play the victim, let her play with her to the end. Seeing Wang Muxiao clutching her chest, Pan Magia hurriedly came over to hold her up and prevent her from falling to the ground. Sister-in-law. Due to severe morning sickness, Wang Muxiao lost a lot of weight. Now her face is pale and has a shape of melon seed, like Zaishi clutching her chests. She was already beautiful, and coupled with this fragile appearance, her beauty increased several times. She raised her hands, pointed at the gate and said, "Get out of my house, or don't blame me for being ruthless." Li Lingyun frowned when he saw this, and left the house to find Lu Cheng. Today it is the Lu family's turn to inspect the production team's fields. So apart from Wang Muxiao, there was only Lu Wenfeng in the house taking a nap. Seeing Wang Muxiao's weak appearance, the woman sneered in her heart, thinking that the rumors she heard about her were a bit exaggerated. While it's true that she foul-mouthed and scolded people like a shrew, she was nothing like a tigress. Since she is weak, there is no need to be afraid of her. Thinking of this, she raised her head and looked at Wang Muxiao arrogantly. She pushed the child aside and said, "Bitch, I'm polite to you because you are Ah Cheng's wife, but since you don't appreciate it, I don't mind teaching you a lesson." After saying that, she looked at Wang Muxiao's belly, her eyes full of hatred and jealousy. When she thought of Lu Cheng's handsome face and good figure, and imagined Wang Muxiao sleeping with him, her jealousy became even stronger and she rushed over. Seeing that she was aiming at Wang Muxiao's belly, Pan Magia was shocked. Before her mind could process the situation, she stood up to block that woman and pushed her away. Due to the heavy workload in the production team, she is stronger than when she first came to Zai village. With one push, the woman fell to the ground. Before that woman could stand up, she saw a broom fall on her face. With a smack sound, the broom hit her face directly. "Ah, what are you doing?" She covered her face with her hands and screamed while blood dripped from her nose. Pan Magia was shocked when she saw Wang Muxiao holding a broom and repeatedly hitting the woman hard. She was nothing like the weak woman just now. Although her face is pale, Wang Muxiao's strength cannot be underestimated. With every swing of the broom, the woman's face and body were bruised. The smacking sound continued, and Wang Muxiao's scolding echoed in the courtyard. "Vixen, how dare you come to find my husband? As a married woman with 3 daughters, you dare to find my husband and ask him to take you and your daughters in. Do you think Lu Cheng's wife is dead?" The woman didn't even have time to stand up, so she could only roll on the ground to avoid the broom. Her hair was messy and her clothes were stained with mud. She blocked the broom with her hand and shouted, "Stop, don't hurt my face." Hearing her words, Wang Muxiao felt as if she had been injected with chicken blood. She increased her strength and shouted at the woman's face, "Do you still have any face? You are a broken shoe who came to offer yourself to my husband, and you dare to tell me not to hurt your face. See how I fix your face." The more she scolded and beat the woman, the more excited Wang Muxiao became. Pan Magia didn't know what to do or how to stop it. She could only stand aside worriedly and watch Wang Muxiao beat the woman into a pig head. Wang Muxiao didn't know how long she had been hitting the woman until she heard Lu Cheng's trembling voice with a hint of shock and fear. "Xiao, stop." Hearing his voice, Wang Muxiao's anger suddenly ignited. As she continued to beat the woman, she said, "Stop, I'm going to beat her to death." Hearing Lu Cheng's voice, the woman's eyes lit up and she crawled towards him crying, "Ah Cheng, save me." Seeing the woman hugging her husband's legs, Wang Muxiao's eyes turned red. She pointed at them, gritted her teeth and said, "Lu Cheng, it seems that you two are still in touch after so many years. You can't forget her, right? Then you can be with her." Lu Cheng was stunned when he heard his wife's words, But before he could explain that he was worried about her, he heard her next words. Since she brought you 3 daughters, you won't need my children anymore. I'll bring my children with me. As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Muxiao ran to her house and walked out holding the sleeping Lu Wenfeng. Seeing that his wife was so angry that she didn't even bring her money and was about to run away from home, Lu Cheng came back to his senses. He peeled the woman off his legs and rushed to his wife. He quickly blocked her way and said in panic, "Wife, what are you talking about?" Wang Muxiao looked at him and said coldly, "Go away." This time Lu Cheng knew that his wife was serious. If she were to leave home now, it would be impossible to coax her back. So he spread his hands to block her way and said, "You are my wife and this is your home. Where do you want to go?" Wang Muxiao glanced at the woman and said, "Anywhere is fine, as long as I don't see that woman." Lu Cheng was angered by her harsh words and pulled Wang Muxiao into his arms. He hugged his wife and daughter, gritted his teeth and said, "Wife, are you serious? Are you leaving me for a stranger?" Because of this hug, Lu Cheng couldn't see his wife's expression at all. At this moment, Pan Majia was panicking, while Li Lingyun watched with interest. Besides him, no one noticed that Wang Muxiao showed a proud smile for a second. The woman looked at them with wide eyes and said, "Ah Cheng, save me and my daughters. I have no one else but you." As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Muxiao pushed Lu Cheng and said, "Lu Cheng, you'd better handle this matter. Otherwise, you can forget about me and our children. I will definitely divorce you." Lu Cheng was so anxious that he shouted at his wife, "Nonsense." Wang Muxiao was startled when she heard her husband's shout. This time she felt she was really wronged and cried. She pointed at him and said, You yell at me because of her." Hearing her nonsense accusations and seeing her crying, Lu Cheng felt distressed and a headache. The doctor had told him before that pregnant women would experience great mood swings due to hormonal imbalances, but he never expected his wife's mood swings would be this bad. So at this time, he could only take a deep breath, calm down, and coax his wife. "Xiao, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I shouldn't have been angry with you. I was just worried about you and our children. I love you, so don't leave, okay?" Wang Muxiao wiped away her tears and nodded, "Don't scold me, or I will leave you." Seeing that his wife calmed down, Lu Cheng breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. He wiped away her tears and said dotingly, "Be good and don't cry. Don't say those nonsense words anymore, all right?" After being married to Wang Muxiao for so many years and having children with her, Lu Cheng had long forgotten what his first love was like. What's more, the woman in front of him looked 10 years older than him, and her face was covered with mud. Therefore, he really didn't know who this woman was. Although he was angry with his wife for saying those heartless words, he was even more angry that this woman appeared out of thin air and made his wife angry. His wife was pregnant and couldn't bear too much stimulation. What would he do if something happened to her and the unborn child? Seeing that she was still crying despite being coaxed, Lu Chen sighed and said helplessly, "Wife, don't be angry. This is not good for your health and our unborn baby." Wang Muxiao snorted at his words and said aggrievedly, "So you still know that I can't be angry?" Knowing that his wife's attitude had softened, Lu Cheng held her hand tightly and turned to look at the woman. He glanced at the frightened children and said, "Auntie, I don't know who you are, so don't call me so intimately. I am married and living happily with my wife and children. Please go back to where you came from." The woman choked up at his words and said, "Ah Cheng, didn't you say you loved me before and wanted to marry me? I know I was wrong, but I'm back now. How can you treat me like this?" Lu Cheng frowned at her words and said, "Auntie, I don't even know who you are. How can I agree to marry you? What's more, you already have 3 daughters. So you'd better go find your husband. Don't make my wife angry. You are making my life difficult." Before the woman could speak, Lu Cheng said, "Also, no matter how stupid I am not an idiot. There is no way I would say those things to a woman who is much older than me when I am already married to a beautiful and caring woman." Lu Cheng waved his hand to the woman nonchalantly and said, "Auntie, my wife is angry now. I have to coax her. You can lie in my yard as long as you want, but when you're done, close the door when you leave." The woman was stunned by his words, while Wang Muxiao sneered at her proudly. As for Lu Cheng, he was worried that his wife would leave him, so he hugged his wife tightly and coaxed, "Wife, it's windy outside, let's go in." Our daughter was also frightened. Wang Muxiao snorted at his words and said coquettishly, "Since you behaved well, I will let you go this time. If this happens again, see how I deal with you." Lu Cheng quickly nodded and said, Yes, thank you, wife." Li Lingyun couldn't help but chuckle when he saw Lu Wenfeng still asleep in her mother's arms and drooling amidst the noise. This couple is the best at talking nonsense. They truly are a match made in heaven. Panmagia was still confused and looked at them blankly. She thought Wang Muxia would be arrested for beating someone in public, but when the dust settled, she walked away unscathed like a weak little wife, while the other person was lying on the ground with bruises and wounds all over her body. After a long time, she finally came to her senses. She looked at her boyfriend and asked, "Brother Yun, what's going on?" Before Li Lingyun could say anything, a neighbor who was watching the commotion said with a laugh, "Comrade Pan, the show is over." Another villager sneered, "A shameless vixen comes to harass a married man." As Lu Cheng's wife, Sister Wang dealt with her perfectly. This kind of woman needs to be taught a lesson to prevent her from thinking she is a goddess. Hearing this, the villagers laughed, and a middle-aged woman said, "Oh, what kind of vixen? With such a face, she still dares to challenge Wang Muxiao. Not to mention her beauty was nothing compared to Sister Wang, just the way she behaves would make people think twice before interacting with her. Shameless." Hearing the villagers' conversation, Panmagia looked around and found a group of people outside the fence. Some even gossiped while eating melon seeds. When the villagers laughed at her, the woman climbed up from the ground with difficulty, then glared at the children and said, "What a bunch of good-for-nothing. When you saw your mother being beaten, you just hid in the corner and didn't come out to help." After spitting on the ground, she pushed the villagers away and left angrily. When the children saw their mother leaving, they quickly chased after them, not daring to look back. Although she was angry, the woman did not dare to provoke Wang Muxiao again, and the matter just passed. After the woman left, the villagers dispersed, leaving only Panmagia and Li Lingyun standing in the messy yard. Panmagia was confused, picked up the broom and started cleaning the yard. Seeing his girlfriend's silly look, Li Lingyun smiled and helped her. At the same time, at Lu Cheng's house, Wang Muxiao put her daughter on the kang bed and came to the living room. Looking at her husband kneeling on the washboard, her lips twitched and sat down on the table. Pouring herself a cup of tea, she took a few sips and asked, "What are you doing?" Seeing his wife's calm look, Lu Cheng broke out in a cold sweat on his back. The angrier his wife gets, the calmer she becomes. So this time, before she punished him, he took the initiative and knelt on the washboard. He pulled his wife's sleeve and said, "Wife, I was wrong. Don't be angry, okay?" After hearing his words, Wang Muxiao finally turned to look at him and said, "You get up first." After hesitating for a while, Lu Cheng finally stood up and sat down next to his wife. Seeing her husband unable to stand steadily, Wang Muxiao felt heartbroken and sighed, "Don't kneel on the washboard in the future. You still need to work to support me and our children. What should I do if something happens to you?" Lu Cheng was overjoyed when he heard this and said, "Wife, I really don't know that woman. She is talking nonsense. You must believe me." Wang Muxiao observed him for a while and asked with doubt, "You really don't know her?" Lu Cheng nodded, raised his hand to swear and said, "I don't even have a clue about who she was." Wang Muxiao found it unbelievable and added, "She is your first love." Lu Cheng was startled by her words, his eyes widened in disbelief, and he shouted while covering his chest in a coquettish manner, "What? I thought she was just a random aunt who covets my beauty." Wang Muxiao was speechless by his shameless remarks and said, "What beauty do you have? Only people who look like the Li brothers can say this, you know." Hearing her words, Lu Cheng was unhappy and snorted, "No matter how handsome other men are, I am your husband. You should accept reality and live with this beauty the rest of your life." Wang Muxiao rolled her eyes at him and said, "Go back to work and don't talk nonsense here." Seeing that his wife was no longer angry, Lu Cheng asked, "Wife, are you not angry anymore?" "I was never angry with you to begin with," she said. "Then why are you crying just now? You almost scared me to death. I thought you really wanted a divorce," Lu Cheng complained aggrievedly. Wang Muxiao pinched her husband's arm as she felt embarrassed about what happened before and said, "If I didn't lose my temper like that, how could I leave the scene unscathed? People might report me for beating that woman. Moreover, she came so suddenly and asked you to take them in. Either she has some conspiracy or she wants to destroy our marriage. If I don't teach her a lesson, others will think that our Lu family is weak," she added with a snort. It took Lu Cheng a while to understand what his wife meant. Now he realizes that his wife could go to jail for beating that woman. So, to win the sympathy of the onlookers, his wife made a scene and acted as the victim. What's more, with her big belly, no one would have imagined that she could hit that woman so hard. That way, instead of reporting her to the authorities, people will take her side. After coming to this conclusion, Lu Cheng gave his wife a thumbs up and praised her sincerely. "Wife, you are so cunning and shameless." Wang Muxiao slapped his hand and said with displeasure, "What cunning and shameless? This is called smart and resourceful." Being hit by his wife, Lu Cheng quickly nodded and changed his words. "Yes, yes, wife, you are so smart and resourceful." She was very satisfied after listening to her husband's words, yawned, and said, "Husband, I'm tired." As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Cheng quickly helped her to the bedroom to sleep. After she fell asleep, Lu Cheng went to boil water for her and her daughter and went to make an afternoon snack. At the same time, the woman and her children walked quickly towards the village entrance with their heads lowered. As soon as she reached the door, she saw a man looking at her from behind the tree. The women were not happy to see the man, but the children were happy. They ran to the man and shouted, "Father." The man hugged the children, then looked at the woman and asked, "Wife, how are you? Did you successfully enter their home?" It was okay that he didn't ask. As soon as he asked, the woman remembered the scene of her being beaten and humiliated and said angrily, "Didn't you see how badly I was beaten? Let alone entering their house, I can't get close to Lu Cheng at all." The man was startled by his wife's words and said, "Who hit you? There is no one at home except Wang Muxiao. You should have no problem dealing with a weak pregnant woman." "What a weak pregnant woman, she is as strong as an ox," the woman said through gritted teeth when she felt the pain on her face and body. After taking a few deep breaths and calming down, she asked, "Husband, are you sure they have the gold?" Upon hearing her words, the man quickly covered his wife's mouth, made a shushing gesture and said, "Keep your voice down, what if someone hears you?" The woman slapped his hand away and said with displeasure, "What are you afraid of? I think your information must be wrong. I have known the Lu family for a long time, and they are descendants of farmers. Therefore, it is impossible for them to have gold." After hearing his wife's words, the man began to doubt the information he had heard from Yang Lichao a long time ago. Judging from the living conditions of the Lu family, it is indeed far-fetched to say that they have hidden gold, but his cousin-in-law's natal family lived near them, and they could often smell the aroma of meat dishes coming from the Lu house. Since he had no son, his status in the family was very low. If they can find gold, they will have a better status in the eyes of their father and mother. Although he still had a glimmer of hope in the matter, when he saw how bad his wife's condition was, he decided to forget it. What if he gets beaten too? It's better not to take the risk and find another way. In less than an hour, the news spread throughout the village that a random woman had appeared in the Lu's house to find Lu Cheng. But what the villagers talked about more was how Wang Muxiao beat the woman to pulp and had a big quarrel with Lu Cheng because of the woman. When Father Lu and Mother Lu heard about this, they hurried home, fearing that their stupid son would make their second daughter-in-law sick because of anger. She was still early in her pregnancy and her body was weak. She won't be able to bear the shock. But when they returned home, they saw Lu Cheng making pancakes in the kitchen. Looking at the tidy yard, they felt that the villagers had exaggerated the scene of the fight. After making sure Wang Muxiao was fine, they scolded Lu Cheng for half an hour before letting him go. After spending an exciting afternoon, Wang Muxiao finally felt a little uncomfortable after waking up from her nap. Mother Lu was worried that something would happen to her and her unborn baby, so she refused to let her cook. In the kitchen, Chen Anwen and Pan Meijia were cooking. Mother Lu came over and said, "Eldest daughter-in-law, put more meat in tonight's meal, and make a bowl of steamed eggs for your sister-in-law." Chen Anwen nodded and asked, "Mother, should I make a bowl of brown sugar egg ginger soup for my sister-in-law too?" Mother Lu thought for a while and said, "No need, she dislikes the ginger taste. Just give her a bowl of steamed eggs. Juyu's husband brought a basket of eggs over a few days ago. Make a bowl for everyone." Hearing this, Chen Anwen smiled and said, "I understand, Mother." Pan Meijia sighed and said, "Sister-in-law, you are so lucky. You have a good mother-in-law." After hearing her words, Chen Anwen smiled and said, "Isn't your future father-in-law also very good? If you marry Li Lingyun, you will become Juyu's second sister-in-law. I have to trouble you to take care of her more." Pan Meijia blushed at her words and said, "Sister-in-law, what did you say? It's Juyu who took care of me." Knowing that the girl was thin-skinned, Chen Anwen stopped teasing her and said, "Meijia, you don't have to buy meat and food as often. We still have a lot of food in the warehouse. You'd better save some money for yourself." "Sister-in-law, how can I eat your family food without paying back the money or buying the ingredients? More importantly, everyone is very kind to me. I can't take advantage of this kindness," Pan Meijia said with a smile. Looking at her smiling face, Chen Anwen said, "We can be considered a family now. There is no need to be so polite to each other." Pan Magia just smiled and said nothing. Although the Lu family treated her like a family member, she still couldn't be rude. She knows that relationships need to be nurtured, and she couldn't take it for granted. They can only have a good relationship if they can maintain propriety and not take advantage of each other. After cooking dinner, Pan Magia divided them into 2 parts and put her and her boyfriend's shares into the bamboo basket. Just after she finished washing up, Li Lingyun came over. Seeing that it was almost dinner time, he did not go in and waited for his girlfriend outside. Not long after, Pan Magia came to the living room carrying a bamboo basket. She knocked on Mother Lu's bedroom door and said, "Aunt Lu, I'm going to Jiyu's house. I'll be back a little late today, so don't wait for me." After she finished speaking, Mother Lu opened the door and asked, "Have you eaten?" Pan Magia showed the bamboo basket in her hand and said, "Brother Yun and I will have dinner together later." Mother Lu nodded and said, "There are some pickles in the front yard. Help me get some for Jiyu and Lingyun." After hearing her words, Pan Magia felt happy and said, "Thank you, Aunt Lu." Mother Lu smiled at her, nodded, and went back to her room, while Pan Magia went back to the kitchen to get the jars. A few days ago, Chen Anwen and Mother Lu made 3 big vats of pickles. The pickles made by Mother Lu were crispy and tasted delicious. When Pan Magia opened the vat, she saw that the vegetables had changed color, and the sour aroma filled the air that her mouth watered. She swallowed and filled the small jar. After she was done, she closed the lid, tied the jar with hemp rope, and left home happily. When she closed the gate, she found her boyfriend leaning against the wall, waiting for her. She was taken aback and asked, "Brother Yun, why don't you go in?" Li Lingyun took the bamboo basket and jar from her hand and said, "It's getting dark, let's leave quickly." Pan Magia nodded and walked to him. As they walked, Li Lingyun said, "Magia, I want to buy a bicycle. Can your cousin help me solve this matter?" After thinking about it, Pan Magia said, "My cousin should have a way to buy a bicycle. Brother Yun, why do you suddenly want to buy one?" Li Lingyun glanced at her and remembered that she always went to Comrade Han to borrow a bicycle, and said with a hint of sourness in his tone, "There is no reason. I just think it is more convenient to have a bicycle. It will be easier for us if we want to go to the county town." Hearing his words, Pan Magia didn't think much and said happily, "Then I'll ask my cousin later. We also need to buy you new clothes. Summer is coming, you need to wear thinner clothes." We can go to the county seat tomorrow." "Okay." At the same time, Lu Jiyu and Li Chenmo were eating in her space. After dinner, the 2 of them were busy brewing tonic wine, fruit wine and rice wine. After they are done with the wine, they also make dumplings, scallion pancakes, empanadas, steamed buns, fruit slices and fruit jams. After taking a shower, the 2 left the space. While waiting for Pan Magia and Zhang Dongmei, they were reviewing high school textbooks in their room. Suddenly, Lu Jiyu remembered the jade and gold he bought and said, "Husband, we haven't been to the black market for a long time. I don't know how that uncle was doing." "Are you worried about his grandson?" Li Chenmo asked. Lu Jiyu nodded and said, "I plan to ask Beiji to find the old man and help us make a deal with him." Li Chenmo thought for a while and said, "I'll tell him tonight." "All right." When the sun set, they heard Li Chen's voice, "Third brother, are you at home?" Lu Jiyu put the textbooks in her space and went to open the door. Seeing Li Chen's, Zhang Dongmei, Li Lingyun and Pan Magia, she was stunned for a moment and said, "Brother, second brother, you are here." Li Lingyun handed her a jar and said, "These are pickles made by your mother." Lu Jiyu took the jar and said, "Thank you, second brother, please come in. I still have matters to deal with, I'll pick up Magia later." After saying that, he rubbed his girlfriend's head and left. Lu Jiyu moved to the side and said, "Brother, sister-in-law Magia, come in." Unlike Li Lingyun, Li Chen's had nothing to do, so he followed them into the house. While the women went to work in the kitchen, he went to see his third brother. Since there was nothing to do, Li Chenmo took out a small bottle of tonic wine and a plate of roasted nuts from the living room cabinet. The 2 sat on the stone table in the front yard and chatted while drinking. In the kitchen, Lu Jiyu took out a piece of paper and said, "Sister-in-law Magia, this is tonight's order. We need to make 20 bowls of jujube cakes, 150 bean rolls, 30 tea eggs, 50 turnip cakes, and 2 kilograms of braised pork." When Zhang Dongmei and Pan Magia heard this order, they could only imagine how much money they could make. The 2 were excited and rolled up their sleeves to get ready for work. Because of the heavy workload, they were using 3 stoves at one time. As for the brazier, it was used by Li Chenmo and Li Chen's to warm up the tonic wine. They worked for hours and finally had all the orders ready. After cleaning the kitchen and washing the pots and pans, the sky is already filled with stars. There were some snacks left, and Lu Jiu divided it into 3 parts and gave one to each of them. In order to prevent the snacks from getting cold, Lu Jiu placed them in her space and carried 2 bamboo baskets to the front yard. Outside, Li Chenmo and others were drinking and chatting. Seeing her coming, he walked over quickly, took the bamboo basket and said, "Wife, you must be tired. Come, have a seat." Lu Jiu shook her head and said, "I'm not tired." She was indeed not tired. Pan Meijia washed the dishes, pans, and the pots, while Zhang Dongmei helped with the cooking. With their help, she only had to prepare the dough and some simple work. After finishing their drinks, Li Chen's and his wife returned home, while Li Lingyun came to pick up Pan Meijia and send her back to the Lu family. After locking the door, Lu Jiu went to wash up and go to bed, while Li Chenmo waited for Beiji to pick up snacks. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Beiji knocked on the door of the backyard and called, "Brother Li." Not long after, Li Chenmo opened the door and said, "Come in." Today, in addition to snacks, Beiji was also arranged by Huzi to pick up the vegetables. Therefore, he did not come alone, but brought another person with him. The girl was waiting outside, guarding their tricycle. When they arrived at the vegetable garden, Li Chenmo said, "Just wait here." In the kitchen, Lu Jiu had already taken out 2 large baskets of snacks, 2 large baskets of vegetables, and a jar of tonic wine. The jar contains 4 liters of tonic wine, equivalent to 40 servings, and can be sold for 20,000 yuan. As for vegetables, they sell 5 kilograms of lettuce for 10 yuan per 500 grams. 2 kilograms of cherry tomatoes, 2 kilograms of eggplant, 2 kilograms of cucumbers, and 2 kilograms of bean poles sell for 15 yuan per 250 grams. Although expensive, the quality is high, and the price is acceptable for those wealthy and powerful families. What's more, after these vegetables are stored in Lu Jiu's space, the health benefits after consumption increase by 3-fold. When Li Chenmo came back with the bamboo basket, Beiji hurried over to help him move it to the tricycle. After moving the bamboo basket, Beiji came back to get the tonic wine. Seeing so much tonic wine, he was ecstatic and asked, "Brother Li, is this all your tonic wine?" "There are still some, but they are not ready yet," Li Chenmo said thoughtfully. "When can we sell the next batch?" Beiji asked. Thinking of the amount of tonic wine in his wife's space, he said, "It will be ready as soon as next week." After hearing what he said, Beiji felt happy and said, "Then, please let me know when the wine is ready." Beiji, I need your help with something." "Brother Li, what is it?" "There is an old man who often waits for my wife at the intersection in front of Huzi's house. Help me take care of him. If he wants to pay with gold and jade, just accept it. You can directly deduct his part from our share." Although Beiji didn't understand why Li Chenmo and his wife wanted to collect jade, and even specifically told him about the old man, he didn't say anything and nodded, "I understand." After sending Beiji away and locking the door, Li Chenmo returned to the bedroom. Lu Jiu was too sleepy and took the 2 of them to her space. After changing their clothes, they went to bed. Meanwhile, Beiji and his sister arrived at Huzi's place in 40 minutes. By the time they returned, the black market was crowded with people. As he rode through the intersection, he saw an old man waiting anxiously in a secluded corner. Thinking of Li Chenmo's words, he looked at his sister and said, Sha, you go back first." Ding Sha didn't know what her brother wanted to do, but she didn't dare to stay outside for too long with these goods. So she nodded and returned to Huzi's place first. After his sister left, Beiji rode towards the old man and asked, "Old man, are you looking for a young woman and her husband?" Hearing his words, the old man was startled and looked at Beiji with squinted eyes. He observed him for a while and saw the bamboo basket on the tricycle. After a while, he asked warily, "Who are you?" Beiji knew that everyone was wary when doing transactions in the black market, so he said, "That young woman won't come again. If you want to buy her stuff, you can follow me." The old man thought of his grandson's condition and finally nodded. He had no choice but to take a gamble. After his grandson ate wild honey and ginseng, his condition improved significantly. But after the wild honey and ginseng was used up, his condition slowly worsened due to lack of nutrition and medicine. He has been waiting for several days to buy more from that girl. For the sake of his grandson, he was willing to follow this man. 10 minutes later, they reached Huzi's place. When the old man saw this, he breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone knows that Huzi is the middleman in the black market. Since this man works for Huzi, his words have more credibility. The old man followed Beiji into the house. After Beiji locked the door, he led the old man to the back room. As he walked through the outside room, he saw a lot of grain and dried meat. His stomach growled at the view of meat, but when he entered the back room and saw the goods inside, he couldn't help but open his eyes in surprise. Hearing their footsteps, Huzi turned around and saw the old man. He looked at Beiji and asked, "Who is this?" Beiji put the bamboo basket on the table and said, "Boss, Brother Lee wants me to take care of this old man. He used to buy things from Brother Lee's wife. Brother Lee said we can directly deduct his portion and accept his payment." Huzi nodded and asked, "Did you bring the tonic wine?" "Yes, we got a jar this time. I'll go get it." After saying this, Beiji went to the tricycle to get the jar and came back soon. When the old man saw the fresh vegetables, meat sauce, and snacks taken out of the bamboo basket, he was stunned. But what shocked him the most was the jar of wine. The moment Huzi untied the rope and opened the lid, the fresh smell of spring dew filled the room. The old man knew it was good stuff without tasting it. After Huzi and Beiji finished checking the goods, he asked, "Nephews, can I buy some tonic wine and food?" Since Lee Chenmo had asked them to take care of the old man, Huzi didn't embarrass him and said, "Uncle, what should I call you and what do you want to buy?" The old man pointed to the tonic wine and said, "You can call me Old Mo. I want a bottle of this wine, 100 grams of each vegetable, a bowl of jujube cake, and a jar of wild honey." Huzi nodded and said, "Uncle, this tonic wine sells for 550 yuan per 100 ml. As for vegetables and so on, this is the price." Huzi handed a piece of paper to the old man. The prices on the list have been changed by him. 10% was added to each item as his fee. When the old man looked at the price, he exclaimed, "Why is it so expensive?" Huzi smiled and said, "Uncle, these things are different from others. Eating these can enhance your health and cure minor diseases such as flu, fever, rheumatism, etc. The health benefits are better than taking medicine. So compared to the health benefits, these prices are very cheap." The old man hesitated and took out a small bag from his clothes. He opened the bag and asked, "Can I pay with these?" Huzi wanted to refuse at first, but Beiji quickly said, "Boss, Brother Lee said we can collect his payment." Since the owner of the thing agreed, he had nothing to say. He took the bag and saw 10 gold coins inside. After calculating the value, he said, "Uncle, you can get 300 ml of tonic wine, 150 grams of each vegetable, 2 cans of wild honey, and some snacks." The old man was delighted and quickly selected the snacks he wanted and left in a good mood. Huzi recorded the items that the old man took and deducted the fees after all the items were sold. After they divided the things based on the pre-order list, Huzi said, "Go and notify our brothers and ask them to deliver the goods before dawn." Beiji nodded and quickly informed the others, "Okay, boss." Huzi took 5 small bamboo tubes and put them into his bundle. Good things must be shared with family members. He planned to give one to his paternal grandpa, one to Gu Menjiao, and one to Grandpa Gu and Grandpa Zhao. As for the other 2 tubes, he will send them back to his mother and uncle. Not long after his paternal grandfather was sent to the Zai village for reformation, his father was framed and executed. Before his father died, he sent his mother and himself to live with his maternal grandparents. Since then, he has lived with his uncle's family. He joined the army at the age of 14 and retired at the age of 18 after he was framed. After retiring from the army, he started working as a middleman in the black market. Since then, he has been working in this industry for more than 8 years. He got all the information about the government's movement from Pan Meijia's eldest brother, who currently works in the government. Pan Meijia's brother was also the one who introduced him to government officials and wealthy families. As for Pan Meijia's second brother, he worked in the army and was the one who recommended Lee Chenmo to him. Huzi was very grateful for this. If his cousin hadn't introduced Lee Chenmo to him, he might not have made so much money right now. Therefore, he would occasionally send him some beef jerky or meat sauce. After handling his own affairs, he checked at the jade and antiques he had collected. He made the list and kept it. When dawn approaches, the black market returns to calmness and is deserted. After calculating the profits and deducting his own share, Huzi put Lu Jiu's share into a bag and then handed a wad of money to Beiji. "This is your share and our brother's share. Go and divide it." Beiji took the money and said with a grin, "Thank you, boss." Huzi patted him on the shoulder and said, "Thank you for your hard work. When summer comes, everyone still needs to help take care of their work at home. So tell them to divide into several groups and take turns coming to work. Now, we must work harder to get more money." "I understand, boss." At the same time in Zai village, villagers were busy working while children ran and played on the dirt roads. During this time, Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu rarely go out and are busy harvesting vegetables, peaches, cantaloupes, and watermelons. Due to the improvement of Lu Jiu's space, her space magic power also increased. Therefore, everything produced in her space contains more spiritual energy, including water. When she used water from the space to water her vegetable garden, it grew several times faster than usual. Every day, Lu Jiu and Li Chenmo need to harvest vegetables and pick fruits. Fortunately, their home is located in a remote area, far away from the village. No one would know about it unless the villagers came to visit. While they were working, there was a knock on the backyard door. Hearing the knock on the door, Li Chenmo frowned and said, "I'll go see who it is." Lu Jiu wiped her sweat and nodded. It was rare for people to visit through the backyard door. Most people who visit would knock on the front door because their backyard is connected to a bamboo forest and they need to take a detour to reach there. Li Chenmo opened the door and was startled when he saw Huzi. Seeing him looking around, he asked, "Brother Huzi, what brings you here today?" Huzi didn't intend to stay too long and took out a bag from his clothes. He handed it to him and said, "I'm just here to send money and the pre-order list. There was a list of jade and antiques inside. If your wife is interested, I can bring it to her. The price is the same as before." After Huzi finished speaking, he left in a hurry without waiting for Li Chenmo's reply. Seeing how suspicious he was acting, Li Chenmo looked at his back thoughtfully. He locked the door and went to find his wife. "Husband, who is it?" Li Chenmo walked up to her, handed the bag over and said, "It's Huzi. He's here to give you money. He also asked if you are interested in buying jade and antiques. The price is the same as before. If you are interested, he will send it over." Lu Jiu opened the bag and saw the list. She took out the list and looked at it for a while, then said, "There are so many jades and antiques. I have to check them myself in case I bought a fake." Li Chenmo took one look and said, "Since the price of each item is the same, let's buy them all. Even if there are fakes, they are only 1 or 2 pieces at most. You will still make money." After thinking about it, Lu Jiu agreed with her husband. Because these are banned items, it is impossible for anyone to waste energy on counterfeiting it. Therefore, the possibility of them buying fake products is very low. After considering the pros and cons, she said, "Then let's buy everything." After a brief conversation, Lu Jiu put the bag into her space. When they finish harvesting the vegetables, she would keep it in her space to ensure the freshness. After 3 hours, they finally finished harvesting all the vegetables and fruits. Although the number is not as large as before, each piece of plot still produced several large bamboo baskets. The sunflowers are also growing crazily and have reached Lu Jiu's chest. Judging from the growth progress, it can be harvested in April. After they finished cleaning up the garden, Lu Jiu took her husband into her space. They took a bath and rested while eating snacks. Li Chenmo was sitting on the balcony, drinking hot soy milk and chewing fragrant fruit pie. He looked at his wife and smiled with satisfaction. While her husband was enjoying the food and drinks, Lu Jiu was counting the money sent by Huzi. She referred to the pre-order and price list and divided the money she earned from the jujube cakes, bean rolls, tea eggs, turnip cakes, and braised pork. After deducting costs, they made a total of 4,150 yuan. Since Zhang Dongmei and Pan Meijian only want 15% of the profit, each person will receive 622 yuan and 50 cents. After thinking about it, Lu Jiu gave each of them 650 yuan and then put the money into her pouch. Including vegetables, tonic wine, wild honey and other snacks, she earned a total of 26,985 yuan. Putting down the money, she went into the bedroom and took out a can where all of their family's money had been kept. She counted the money again and said with a smile, "Husband, counting the small change and coins, we now have 83,798 yuan." In addition to money, they also had 15 gold coins, as well as several boxes of jade and antiques. Although these things cannot be taken out for the time being, they will become priceless treasures in the future. Seeing his wife's happy face, Li Chenmo laughed and teased her. "My wife is so good. She can cook delicious meals and make a lot of money." Hearing her husband's words, Lu Jiu raised her chin and said proudly, "Exactly, so you must be good to me or I won't support you." Li Chenmo laughed out loud at what she said and said, "Okay, I will remember what my wife said." After taking a nap, the two left the space and appeared in the bedroom. It was almost noon. Lu Jiu was cooking in the kitchen, and Li Chenmo was weaving bamboo baskets in the front yard. Not long after, he heard a milky voice coming from outside. "Uncle Li, are you at home?" Hearing Dong Huang's voice, Li Chenmo put away the half-woven bamboo basket and went to open the door. Opening the door, he saw Dong Li and Dong Huang carrying 3 bundles of firewood. Since Dong Li was stronger, he carried 2 bundles of firewood, while Dong Huang carried one bundle. Seeing them sweating profusely, Li Chenmo took the firewood from them and said, "Come in." "Thank you, Uncle Li." After the two walked into the front yard, Li Chenmo locked the gate and said, "Your aunt is cooking and the food is almost ready. Stay for lunch." Since they agreed beforehand, Dong Li and Dong Huang did not refuse and went to the backyard to help, while Li Chenmo put firewood in the woodshed. Before they even entered the kitchen, they could already smell the aroma of eggs. For today's lunch, Lu Jiu made fish steak, cob salad, herbal chicken soup, and egg-fried rice. The weather was getting hotter and hotter, and she wanted to drink chicken soup to cool down. Hearing a series of footsteps, she thought it was her husband and said, "Husband, help me bring out the food. I almost finished the fried rice." Dong Li and Dong Huang's stomachs were already growling when they greeted her, "Aunt Li." Lu Jiu turned around when she heard their voices. Seeing them standing motionless at the door, she smiled and said to them, "Zyro Li and Zyro Huang are here. Can you help me move the cutlery and plates to the living room? We can eat when I'm done." Both children nodded and brought out the tableware and cob salad to the living room. Li Chenmo came back and brought out the soup. After she finished cooking, Lu Jiu came to the living room with fish steaks and a basket of egg-fried rice. When she walked into the living room, her husband and the Dong siblings were already waiting for her. After putting the food on the table, she looked at the children and said, "Auntie made a lot today. You can eat as much as you want, don't be shy." Dong Li nodded and said, "Thank you, Aunt Li, Uncle Li." Dong Huang copied her brother's words and thanked them as well. It was rare for the Dong siblings to have a hearty meal. When they saw the meat and eggs, they put aside their worries and enjoyed the food to their heart's content. While eating, Lu Jiu said, "Your aunt and uncle can give you 3 meals a day, so you two should come over for meals." Hearing her words, Dong Li paused his hand, looked at her and said, "Thank you, Aunt Li. However, we will not take advantage of you and Uncle Li's kindness. We will work hard for our own food." Lu Jiu likes children and feels heartbroken when she sees the Dong siblings being too sensible at a young age. Growing up as orphans was not easy for them. After thinking about it, she said, "How about you come and help your uncle and aunt harvest the vegetables every day? In exchange, we will prepare meals for you." Thinking of the vegetable garden he just saw, Dong Li thought for a while and finally nodded. The amount of vegetables was a lot. If Uncle Li goes to work, Aunt Li needs to do everything alone, and the work is indeed too much for her to handle by herself. In this case, it would be better for them to help her. On the one hand, it can reduce her workload, and on the other hand, it will not be embarrassing for them to eat the food cooked by Aunt Li. Seeing his agreement, Dong Huang also nodded and said, "Aunt Li, Zyro Huang is very good at harvesting vegetables." Li Chenmo didn't speak when he heard his wife's words. As long as his wife is happy, he will agree to anything. What's more, he does have the same intentions as his wife. Lu Jiu smiled after hearing Dong Huang's words, took a piece of fish steak for her and said, "Okay, eat more so that you can grow up quickly and help Auntie." "Okay." After lunch, Dong Li and Dong Huang went to pick up pigweed, while Li Chenmo went to send money to Zhang Dongmei and Pan Meijia. While her husband was out, Lu Jiu tidied up the house. The days passed leisurely, and 3 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. Today is April 1, 1974, and spring is almost over. The weather is getting hotter day by day. Waking up before dawn, Lu Jiu and Li Chenmo went to her space to wash up and came out after breakfast. Lu Jiu saw that the leaves of the sunflowers had turned yellow, the petals were withered, and the seeds were full. She smiled and said, "Husband, we can harvest the sunflowers today." After hearing her words, Li Chenmo went to get some big baskets to place the sunflowers. They cut about a foot off the flower heads with a harvesting knife and placed them in the baskets. The process was simple, and they harvested all the sunflowers in less than 2 hours. When they were done, Lu Jiu collected all the sunflowers into her space and went in with her husband. In the space, both of them wore gloves and began to rub the seed heads above the basin to remove the seeds. Although this process was a bit fun, after rubbing for a long time, Lu Jiu felt sore in her arm and rested for a while. Because of the amount of sunflowers, it took them 3 days in space to remove all of the seeds. After that, they used machines to remove debris, clean the seeds, roast them, and package the seeds for storage. When they reappeared in the bedroom, more than an hour had passed. Before they could tidy up the garden, they heard a knock on the door in the front yard. Judging from the time, it seems that the Dong family brother and sister are coming. In the past 3 weeks, the Dong siblings have become accustomed to working at Li Chenmo's place. They come at 7 in the morning and work for 3 hours. After lunch, they went to collect firewood for Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu. Then, when they came in the afternoon, Lu Jiu would give them dinner to bring back or let them stay for dinner. After 3 weeks of eating Lu Jiu's food, their previous thin, malnourished appearance disappeared. Opening the door, Li Chenmo saw 2 cute children smiling at him. "Good morning, Uncle Li." He stepped aside and said, "MHMM, good morning, come in." Since the Dong siblings came to help clean up the garden, he went to the pig pen to feed the pigs and clean the pen. Seeing it was them, Lu Jiu said, "Both of you are here, let's have some breakfast first." Dong Li and Dong Huang, who were already very familiar with Li Chenmo and Lu Jiu, did not refuse. They had a bowl of porridge, a cup of soy milk, and 2 meat buns for breakfast. Sitting next to them, Lu Jiu said, "Next we have to clean the sunflower stems and harvest the vegetables. We also need to harvest the fruits. If there is not enough time, there is no need to collect pigweed today." After listening to her words, they both nodded. Dong Huang swallowed the food and said, "Aunt Li, your fruit is so fragrant, I can smell it from outside." Hearing her words, Lu Jiu smiled and said, "If you like it, bring some back later." Dong Huang shook her head and said, "Aunt Li, I don't want to bring it back, I'll just eat it here." Lu Jiu smiled and said, "Okay, Aunt Li will cut a cantaloupe for you later." "Thank you, Aunt Li." After breakfast, they started to work. Since pulling out the sunflower stems requires strength, Dong Huang did not join in and was responsible for harvesting the vegetables. While they were working, Li Chenmo returned from the pig pen with Li Lingyun and Li Chen's. Seeing them coming to help, Lu Jiu smiled and said, "Elder brother, second brother, you are here." Li Chen's nodded at her and said, "Sister-in-law, we come to help tidy your vegetable gardens." "Thank you, elder brother." With extra help, they had the garden cleared by noon. Before Li Chen's and Li Lingyun left, Lu Jiu went to the kitchen to pack some roasted sunflower seeds, fruit slices, 10 eggs, and a small bottle of tonic wine for them. As the weather gets hotter, they are prone to heat stroke. Because they didn't often eat the food in her space every day, she occasionally gave them some tonic wine to drink. This way, they won't get sick due to weather changes or overexertion. Lu Jiu went to the front yard and handed the bamboo basket to them while saying, "Elder brother, second brother, take this back. Thank you for helping us today." Knowing that their third brother was the richest among them, they did not refuse and took the bamboo basket. Li Chen saw the tonic wine and said, "Sister-in-law, it's not easy for you to make this wine, just keep it for yourself." Li Chenmo wiped the sweat from his wife's forehead with a towel and said, "Brother, the new batch is almost ready. Occasionally drinking tonic wine is good for your health." Li Chen's was startled by his words. He didn't expect that they could find more wild ginseng, but thinking about his second and third brothers who like to go into the mountains, it's possible for them to find more wild ginseng. So he nodded and said, "Then I won't be polite and accept it. Thank you." After seeing them off, they continued to harvest vegetables for a while before having lunch with the Dong siblings. There were still a few hours before the sun set, so Dong Li and Dong Huang went to collect pigweed and firewood. While they were busy living a peaceful life, in the abandoned factory outside the county, the sound of whips hitting human flesh and the hoarse screams of men could be clearly heard. Sunlight shone in through the small windows, vaguely illuminating the bloody scenes inside the factory. At the end of the thick hemp rope, Yang Lichao's feet were tied as she was hung upside down, with numerous old and new wounds covering his body. Blood oozed from his wounds and slowly dripped onto the dusty ground. Musique, who was standing not far from him, raised his arm and swung hard. As he moved, the thick leather whip in his hand made a loud cracking noise and hit Yang Lichao's chest, leaving a long bloody mark. He looked at the half-dead man in front of him and said coldly, "I didn't expect you to be able to endure it for so long. It's been almost a month and you're still alive. Impressive." Yang Lichao felt only burning pain all over his body, as well as a feeling of suffocation as blood rushed to his head. He opened his swollen eyelids and asked hoarsely, "Who are you? Why did you do this to me?" Musique sneered at his words. "Yang Lichao, it doesn't matter who I am. You just need to know that this is punishment for what you did to my wife and all of the women you harmed." Yang Lichao's eyes flickered as he recalled the women he had defiled. But he couldn't think of anyone suitable to be this man's wife. Since he didn't know who this man was talking about, he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." After hearing his words, Musique dipped the whip into a bucket filled with salt water. After a few times, the water turned red. Looking at Yang Lichao in front of him, his eyes were full of killing intent, and he hit him several times with the whip in his hand. Yang Lichao felt the sharp, burning pain as if his body was being torn apart. "Ah." As Musique whipped him, he said, You have ruined so many women, how dare you forget them and your crimes? It seems that these beatings are not enough to wake you up. What followed after his words was the sound of a whip cracking, accompanied by a man's scream. 30 minutes later, Yang Lichao fainted from the pain. Seeing him fainted while being hung up like a dead pig, Mu Zige looked at his subordinates. Seeing his gaze, his subordinate picked up a basket of salt water and poured it on Yang Lichao. He woke up immediately due to the sudden pain. Many of his wounds were inflamed and oozing pus due to the salt water. Walking to his side, Mu Zige looked directly into Yang Lichao's eyes and said coldly, full of killing intent, "Yang Lichao, I will not let you die easily. I will repay every bit of pain and scars you have caused to Qing by tenfold." Hearing his words, Yang Lichao's eyes widened and he looked at him in horror. "I didn't, it was my mother's idea, not mine." Mu Zige sneered and said, "You don't have to worry about your mother. I have someone to take care of her in prison. Since you like rapping women so much, I will give you a taste of your own medicine." Looking at Mu Zige's cold eyes, Yang Lichao begged with horror, "No, please spare my life. I'll do anything you ask me to, please spare my life." Mu Zige handed over the whip to his subordinate and said nonchalantly, "Send him to Madame Cheng. Tell her, I want him alive as long as possible. Also, treat his wounds and let him serve at least 3 people every day." When the men heard his words, they trembled all over as those words sent chills down their spines. No one knows that Mu Zige is an underground boss disguised as an officer. He is known as a cold-blooded, vengeful underground overlord, and Madame Cheng is one of his right-hand assistants, responsible for gathering intelligence while opening secret brothels to accumulate wealth. As for her brothel, it not only serves men and women, but also people with special fetishes. Many of her regular clients are powerful men who like men. However, due to the lack of people willing to serve, most of the people working there were people who had offended Mu Zige, or prisoners on death row. She treated those men very cruelly and was known as the Smiling Fox. Anyone sent to her brothel was equal to a dead person because they would never leave that place for the rest of their lives. At this point, Yang Lichao's fate has basically been decided. Mu Zige's subordinate accepted the whip and said, "Yes, boss." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Lichao knew that it would be better to die immediately than to live in torture for the rest of his life, and shouted desperately, "Kill me, please just kill me." Mu Zige ignored his plea for death and horse scream and left the abandoned factory without looking back. His wedding with Zhiro Yiking will be held in a week. He wanted to go home early and check the preparations himself. After so many years, he finally found her and would be able to marry her. Thinking of their future together, a smile appeared on his face, softened his originally harsh and cold expression. In the capital, the residence of the Zhiro family was bustling with activities. Zhiro Yiking sat on the balcony outside her room, watching people busy decorating the house with double happiness paper cuts and hanging red lanterns in the garden. She looked at those people in daze, remembering her meeting with Mu Zige in the hospital a month ago. At that time, she felt that it was a good deal to marry a man who was willing to accept her imperfect body and who could help her brother's career. So she already resigned to marry a cold, calculating man. But on the day she met her future husband, she was surprised because he not only looked good, but also exuded the aura of a mature and steady man. He was wearing a military uniform and had a cold expression, but his eyes were very gentle when he looked at her. It wasn't until he sat beside her hospital bed that she noticed his clenched hands were shaking due to nervousness. He lowered his eyes and she didn't know what he was thinking until he opened his lips and told her about himself. He is 26 years old and joined the army when he was 15 years old. At the age of 18, in order to fulfill his mother's last wish, he married a girl chosen by his family. But after they married, he was sent to a secret mission again and rarely came back. After 2 years of marriage, his wife, who was still a virgin, ended up cheating on him with his cousin. After the divorce, he never returned to the village and only sent money back to his father. They met when he was 22 years old and she saved his life when he was chased by the enemies. He had been looking for her for many years and finally saw her photo in Zhiro Yigyun's wallet and knew that the girl he was looking for was the sister of his subordinate. Zhiro Yiking smiled when she thought of what he said that day. "Miss Zhiro, I have loved you for 4 years. I don't care what happens to you. In my heart, you are the most beautiful and perfect woman. I am willing to wait for you until you are ready to fully accept me. Unless you are willing, otherwise we will not consummate our marriage. As long as you are willing to marry me, I swear that I will only have you as my wife for the rest of my life." At that time, she finally saw a glimmer of hope in the unknown dark future. She didn't know what she was thinking when she held his clasped hand and said, "Thank you, Mu Zige. I am willing to marry you and swear to be faithful to you for the rest of my life." As soon as she finished speaking, he stood up, pulled her into his embrace and hugged her tightly. She felt safe in his warm embrace and heard his husky voice say, "Ching-er, thank you for giving me this chance." Just as she was lost in thought, she heard a knock on the door, followed by her mother's voice, "King, your wedding dress is ready. Do you want to try it?" After coming back to her senses, Zyro Yiking smiled and said, "Mother, please come in." The next moment, the door was pushed open. Her mother walked into her bedroom, holding a neatly folded red wedding dress in her hand, and said, King, look, Zieg sent someone to order this dress. The wedding dress is finally delivered today." Looking at the bright red color, Zyro Yiking caressed the wedding dress carefully. The embroidery is exquisite and beautiful. She loved it very much. With him by her side, she would no longer be afraid. She was sure they would have many children and grow old together happily. She raised her head, looked at her mother, smiled and said, "Mother, I want to try it." Her mother smiled and said happily, "Good, you will look very beautiful in it." At this moment, the remaining female protagonist's halo in Zyro Yiking's soul turns into countless golden particles and disappears from her soul. From this moment on, she has nothing to do with the male protagonist or the fate of the world, breaking away from the chains of the so-called plot. At the same time, in Zai village, Lu Jiu felt dizzy as countless golden particles appeared in her space and were absorbed by it. The dizziness lasted only a few seconds, and she just thought it was because of the heat, so she continued salting the fish and drying it in the sun. At the same time, in the northern coastal city, Han Yuluo had just finished his work and left the factory. It has been more than a month since he and Han Lihua left the county seat and settled in this city. Since it was the first time for them to live in a coastal city, it took him and Zyro Hua nearly a month to adapt to the weather and the bustling life there. After being transferred to the new factory, his job was very different from his previous workplace. Because he was literate, he was appointed as an accountant who handled workers' salaries rather than a factory worker. In addition to a monthly salary of 60 yuan, the factory also provided Han Yuluo with a 50 meters square two-bedroom flat with a living room, kitchenette, and bathroom. Every month he also receives coupons for grains, meat, powdered milk, oil, cloth, etc. In addition, he also got 10 kilograms of white rice, 15 kilograms of white flour, 1 can of lard, 5 kilograms of white sugar, 2 kilograms of salt, 250 ml of sesame oil, 20 eggs, half a kilogram of brown sugar, and 10 kilograms of meat. In the county town, his current income and benefits are much better than that of the factory manager. The reason he was paid so well was that his position was prone to corruption. So, in order to prevent the accountants from being dissatisfied with the salaries and misappropriating money from the factory, the superiors decided to give them higher salaries and more benefits. Because Han Lihua was registered as his daughter, the factory gave her free education, which was one of Han Yuluo's benefits. After leaving the factory, he went to the state-owned fresh market and bought a fish. Due to the city's proximity to the sea, fish and other seafood are much cheaper than vegetables or meat. Therefore, he grew some vegetables in a pot at home, so he only bought one fish and planned to make fish soup for dinner. Before returning home, he went to the only school in the area and picked up Han Lihua. When he arrived at the school, the students had already finished their class and left the school. There were only a few students standing at the school gate, waiting for their parents to pick them up. When he was near the school, he saw his daughter talking to a woman at the door. Zyro Hua is rarely willing to interact with strangers, especially women, because of her mother, so when he saw her chatting happily with a woman, he was pleasantly surprised. When he got close, he heard the woman's gentle voice saying to Zyro Hua, "Little girl, you are so smart. Auntie has candy here. This is a gift for our first meeting. Take it." Han Lihua smiled at her, took the candy from her hand and said, "Thank you, Auntie. You are so nice and beautiful." After she took the candy, she took out a small bag from her backpack. She handed her a piece of candied fruit and said, "Auntie, this is for you, our first meeting gift." Han Yuluo was a little surprised to see Zyro Hua giving the candied fruit to the woman. After Lu Jiu gave her the candied fruits, she cherished them very much and would not eat them unless she was sick. Even he himself did not get his daughter's candied fruits. When Han Lihua saw her father, she hurried to his side and shouted, "Father, you are here." Seeing her rushing over, Han Yuluo leaned over and picked her up while saying, "Don't run, be careful of falling." After picking her up, he looked at the woman's back and said, "Hello, comrade, thank you for accompanying my daughter." Hearing his voice, the woman stood up and turned around. When they saw each other, they were both surprised and said in unison, "It's you." After being stunned for a moment, the two burst into laughter at the same time. After a while, Huang Yuanfeng smiled and said, Comrade Han, long time no see, do you also live in this city? Han Yuluo nodded and replied with a smile, long time no see, I moved here a month ago, how are you? I'm doing great, she smiled. Han Yuluo observed her expression and smiled when he saw her relaxed and smiling happily. Her face and body no longer had the depressing, gloomy aura like before, as if she had left the past behind and become a new person. This is a good thing. Huang Yuanfeng didn't know that someone was observing her with a smile. She looked at Han Lihua and said, your daughter is smart and cute. Those girls in Zai village will be very sad if they know that you are married. Han Yuluo let out a chuckle when he heard her words. He looked at his daughter and said, Comrade Huang, you must be joking. I have nothing to do with them, what's there to be sad about? He had no intention of telling her about his marital status. Since he couldn't move on yet from Lu Jiu, there was no need to bother with the matter. Being misunderstood as a married man has its benefits. At least he didn't have to worry about breaking any girl's heart when he rejected them. Huang Yuanfeng sighed in her heart. This man treated everyone with equal kindness and was known as a good man. But he was simply a heartless man towards his lover with this personality. It's okay to be friends with him, but it will be a disaster if the girl loves him. She will get jealous every day and can't live a peaceful life. Not knowing that his value as a marriage prospect in Huang Yuanfeng's eyes had dropped below zero and placed in the friend zone, Han Yuluo asked, Comrade Huang, where do you live? I'll walk you back. Huang Yuanfeng looked at the watch on her wrist and said, I live in dormitory building number 3, but I have a plan, so I won't trouble Comrade Han. After speaking, she touched Han Lihua's head and said, Little girl, auntie is leaving. See you next time. Knowing that she couldn't keep her for long, Han Lihua nodded and said reluctantly, Auntie, let's have a meal together next time we meet. Huang Yuanfeng was amused by her mature words and said with a smile, Okay, Auntie will treat you to delicious food. Han Lihua readily agreed and nodded, okay. After saying goodbye to them, she walked towards the department store. Her mother came to see her, and she had promised her mother to take her to the department store. Hello.